My sister and I lost our dad a year ago. He was my only parent. Mom was never in mine or my sister's life. Dad left money, inheritance, for me and sister, and she used her inheritance to get new cars and renovate her house. I live with my aunt right now cause my brother-in-law didn't let me stay with my sister. I'm planning on using my inheritance money to pay for college tuition. I've always wanted to be doctor but haven't decided which branch yet. My sister and I haven't been close. It started after she got married to her chronically ill husband, who was allowed to make backhanded comments about dad and mock his illness, and make a scene at his funeral. Only because he's ill and shouldn't be held accountable for his behavior. I've distanced myself, but my sister kept visiting a lot lately, venting about my brother-in-law's condition. He's been in and out the hospital for heart problems and in need for a surgery. She brought up my inheritance money several times, but I end up cutting the conversation. She then straight up asked if I could help pay for her husband's surgery and she'd pay back in less than a year. I felt uneasy cause if I give her money from my inheritance, which is a large amount, then there's no guarantee she'll pay back before it's time to apply for college. I'm taking a year gap, but I know my sister can't pay back that much and I felt I was risking my future. I refused to help and she had a meltdown at my aunt's house, calling me heartless, cruel with no empathy. She said that her husband's health should be a priority and I needed to help because education is nothing compared to someone's health, and asked if I'd be happy to see her as a widow and my nephew with no father. My aunt suggested others pay, but most of them cut my sister and her husband off. I argued that her husband's poor health isn't my fault after she kept blaming and guilt-tripping me. She kept crying, and although my aunt decided to stay out of it, she said that I should be prepared for permanent damage in my relationship with my sister if I don't help her now. She's been sending texts and pictures of her family telling me this is what I was saying no to. A happy, healthy family with a healthy husband and father. I cried and felt like I was being selfish, not good aunt and sister. I asked my friend and he said let them sell the cars and all the luxurious stuff they bought to afford the surgery, and warned me, if I give them money I'll never get it back and may not be able to go to medical school. 6 years ago my son Matthew had a daughter with his now ex-wife Josie. I have always thought of Josie as my own daughter, so when they divorced 7 years ago due to my son cheating, I was conflicted and disappointed. Josie wasn't particularly close with any of her family, so my husband and I naturally took them in. Josie was an angel. She had insisted that we didn't have to lift a finger more than before we had taken them in, and though she was hurt, she kept civil around Matthew. My husband and I held a huge hand in raising their daughter Ruth, because Matthew remarried less than a year later and now has a 4-year-old son after disowning Ruth. 2 years ago my husband was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was hard on everyone, especially Ruth. They were extremely close. She told him about her girlfriends and boyfriends before anyone else and has always wanted him to be the one to walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Matt rarely ever visited and didn't answer our calls, often saying that we had other kids, so it wasn't like my husband was dying lonely. Last night Matt stopped by to talk about inheritance. He never mentioned Josie nor Ruth and hinted that he thought he should get more inheritance than his siblings the entire time. My husband and I shared awkward looks until he decided to cut in. He explained that everyone would get a piece, but he'd focus more on Ruth and Bonnie, one of our other grandkids. Matt got angry and said that Ruth was just a bastard and that his son deserved more than her. My husband got furious after that and left the room saying that he wouldn't include Matthew at all. Matt yelled back and turned to me saying that Ruth wasn't worth it because she'd just grow up to be a whore like her mother. I told him that I'd rather have her mother as my daughter than him as my son and insisted that he leave. I'm getting phone calls from Matt's wife and family friends saying that my husband and I overreacted, and he was just angry that we were playing favorites. To clear some things up, Josie did not cheat on Matthew. Josie and Matthew met later in college and Josie was known as a party girl. Before that, Ruth isn't the product of an affair, but we are planning on getting a DNA test because what Matthew said has gotten under Ruth's skin. She was at the house when this occurred and overheard it. When it came to taking in Josie and Ruth, we didn't hesitate because Josie is not from here. She and Matt lived in another country until he moved them here a few months before he got caught cheating, and they had nowhere else to go as Josie was a stay-at-home mom. I had no intentions of choosing Josie over Matt then and now, and I never discouraged Matt from visiting. I tried to make it very clear that we weren't picking and choosing when we took Josie in. We just wanted her and our granddaughter to be safe and have a good home. I am a 16-year-old female. I used to have a good relationship with my mother. That has since crashed and burned since she dated and married my stepdad, Gary, 6 years ago. Gary treats his son Ian, 19 male, like he's the center of the universe and expects my mother to as well, so she does. Anything Ian wants, Ian gets, and that usually comes at the expense of me. Ian wanted my room when they moved it. I was forced to go to another room to make the transition easier for everyone. Ian wanted a car for his 16th birthday. I didn't get braces for another year. Ian wanted to go on an expensive trip for spring break. I had to give up volleyball to make it happen. Ian wanted to have his side of the family over. I was expected to find somewhere else to be, since I wasn't family. My mother just went along with all of this and acted like it shouldn't affect me at all. My dad was overseas for a long time, and we used to FaceTime, and he was so upset by what he was hearing. He's home now and he's offering to have me come live with him. I'm not seeing a reason not to go, and so I told my mom I wanted to go live with my dad. She predictably freaked out and asked why I'd want to do that and said that we had such a good relationship. She didn't understand how this came so out of the blue. I told her that we haven't had a good relationship since she blindly decided to follow Gary's lead and give Ian anything he wanted, and it always came at my expense. My mom tried to argue, so I said I also wanted to leave because she let them kick me out of my own house because I wasn't family. So I was going to go live with someone who was. My mom started crying and said she wouldn't let me go. So I told her that my dad was willing to go to court over it and I was old enough to be able to say where I wanted to be. She's been a crying mess since I told her, and Gary is being a jackass about how awful I'm being. He was. ING at me about how terribly I'm treating them and how I'm not thinking about them at all. I asked why should I. He never thought of me when he was taking things from me to give to his kid. I said let's face facts here, you don't care about me, what you care about is losing the child support you spend on your son. He sort of went slack-jawed and I walked off. My dad said my mom called and threatened to take him to court, so he said he'd see her there. Now she's panicking because she realized he is planning on taking her to court over this. Mom and Gary of course think I'm the asshole for making things hard for everyone. But my dad and grandparents say to leave and never look back. I am a 28-year-old woman and have been married to my husband, a 32-year-old man, since 2018. My husband is ethnically Japanese and a second-generation American. His parents are from Osaka. He kind of sort of half speaks Japanese, mostly sentences he has memorized / greetings. And his parents speak great English. On the other hand, I lived in Japan for 3 years, so I am conversationally pretty good. I have studied hard to get to the level I'm at, and I have passed level 2 of the Japanese language proficiency test. Not great, but not bad. Lately, my husband is super into me calling him Goshijin-sama, which can be translated to my honored husband. It's extremely unusual to call your own husband this, as it is usually reserved for other people's husbands as a respectful term. But it's kind of an anime / Japanese geek culture thing. I was okay with it in private because it makes him happy. Last week went to his parents' house for dinner, and on the way over he asked if I could call him Goshijin-sama all evening. I immediately shot his idea down with a firm no, because that would be super embarrassing. His parents are native Japanese speakers in their 60s. I'm not going to subject them to what you'd pay a waitress in a maid cafe $20 for a cup of coffee to call you. To be honest, I don't think my husband really gets how the phrase is properly used, despite his insistence. He kept trying to convince me, reminding me that he is Japanese and knows what is proper. Despite the fact that I speak better Japanese than him, but I was having none of it. I just shut down and tuned him out. We got there, and sometime into the night I called his name to ask if he wanted a drink. Despite him being in hearing range, he ignored me. I said it again, and this time he looked at me, gave me this pleading shrug, and then turned back to the TV. I didn't get him a drink and just got myself one. A while later, I said his name again, and he audibly sighed. He told me that he wanted me to call him what I call him at home. To which I responded I would most certainly not be calling him what I call him at home. This was all in front of his parents, by the way. On the car drive home, I told him that I wasn't going to call him Gashijin-sama anymore because he can't draw the line between fun playful couple stuff and his parents. He has sulked for the past week and I don't even know what to do. Normally I would not even consider the possibility that I was wrong here, but he's normally a very rational, reasonable, and respectful person. I feel like I'm being gaslighted and don't know what to do.